Hello everyone, it is Aussie Select and I am back today. I am doing yet another federal politics video and this one is going to be focused on the Senate. This time we are looking at the question, should Albo go for a double dissolution? Now, a couple of weeks ago, there was talk that Albo was threatening a double dissolution to the Greens and I guess everyone else, the crossbench, the Liberal National Coalition, everyone, they were saying, we might go to a double dissolution, and this video is asking the question, is that a good idea or not? What you are looking at right now is what I predict would have been the result in the Senate, something around this, something like this, of if there was a double dissolution at the 2022 federal election. And as you can see, it's actually pretty good for the Labour Party because they have quite a big crossbench to work with who aren't the Greens. If you add them up, 5, 2, 1, 2, 2, it adds up to 12. Add that to 26 and that's 38. So that's almost enough to pass legislation through the Senate without the Greens or the Liberal National Party. You need 39 to pass through the Senate without them. So I guess if you look at this, if this is an accurate result, there's a few things that, maybe you could argue would be different. Like maybe in South Australia, this Nick Xenophon, who I'm giving this seat to, that seat might have gone to like the Legalized Cannabis Party, or it could have gone to the Liberal National Coalition, or in Queensland, maybe this Legalized Cannabis seat might have gone to the Greens. So there's a few things that might have been slightly different, but I think it would have been a result similar to this. And this is why the Labour Party might have thought it would be a good idea to go to a double dissolution, especially during the term, because as you might remember, in early to mid 2023, Labour Party had a pretty good lead on the two-party preferred. It was something like 55-45 for a point. And so at that point, it could be argued that if they went to a double dissolution, they might have won 4 seats in Queensland or something, and they could have hit the magic number 39 without either the Coalition or the Greens, and that means that they could have passed some legislation without requiring either of them, which is basically what the Labour Party really wants. But as we know, things have changed since 2023. Things have not gone quite the best for the Labour Party, and the poll bludger, with their track of polls and averaging and all that stuff, has the Coalition slightly ahead on the two-party preferred at 50.1%. And of course, there was a news poll this week which had, for the first time, the Coalition ahead on news poll 51-49. So the Labour Party got about 52-48, two-party preferred last election, and on bludger track, they are behind 2.2% since the election. So what we're going to look at is, if there was a double dissolution held today, what would the result be, and is it preferable in any way to if the Labour Party did a half Senate election? Now we know that the next half Senate election is not going to be until sometime next year, and things might change by then. But if there was a double dissolution, the Labour Party would have to call it pretty soon. So looking at how the polls are looking right now is somewhat accurate. Of course, like election campaigns will happen, but this is just an experiment. This is not meant to be taken too seriously. We're just saying, like, is this a bluff from the Labour Party? Spoiler, it is. Or is the Labour Party actually thinking that with a double dissolution they could screw with the Greens or the Coalition and get a pretty good result? Because actually, if you look at this, the Greens and the Coalition do not do as well if the double dissolution was held in 2022. The Liberal National Coalition get only just a bit more seats than the Labour Party, because a lot of the seats they would have gotten goes to these like One Nation and the UAP. And the Greens have one less seat. They had 12 after 2022. Of course, they've lost one. But I suspect that it would have been likely if there was a double dissolution that they would not have got a second seat in Queensland or possibly some other state, and they would have only ended up with 11 seats. It is more difficult to get 2 seats in a double dissolution than it is to get 1 seat in a half Senate election, because that's just how the mathematics works. Right, so let's look at how the polls are faring, and we can sort of work out how things have changed since 2022. Now, these polls don't have all of the info that we would need to really predict the double dissolution election. The quota is low, and so parties like the Legalized Cannabis Party could end up getting seats, even though they're not really polled by any like major polling company. I don't know anyone who actually polls the Legalized Cannabis Party, but we can sort of make inferences based on the previous 2022 election, which we have the results of here, what kind of results we might expect if there was election this year under double dissolution. So let's go state by state. Now in New South Wales, I think that the result would be pretty status quo. Would be 5 LNP, 4 Labor, 2 Greens, and 1 One Nation. The Greens are polling okay. The latest result for Strategic only had them on 10%, but I think it should be enough for 2 seats. Maybe legalized cannabis would win a seat in New South Wales at the expense of the Greens, but there's no sort of indication of that. Either way, it would be an even split on the left and right. And it's not like the Labor Party's getting any more seats there. If we go down to Victoria, the Coalition are actually doing better in Victoria than they were doing last time. If you remember, they only won 2 seats last time in the half Senate election, which was quite a big deal. The last seat went to the UAP. I actually think that with the polling that we can see here, the Coalition would win 5 seats. The Labor Party would win 4. The Greens would win 2. And One Nation would win 1. So it would be the same result as New South Wales. Again, legalized cannabis. Maybe they could come out and steal some votes from the Greens, but the Greens usually poll pretty well in Victoria. So I don't think it's hugely likely. And of course, like the Coalition vote could be suppressed. You know, even in August, their primary vote was at 33%. I'm going to go with the LNP winning 5 seats there. In Queensland, Labor Party are not doing too well. I think they would win 3 seats, although last time they would have struggled to win 4 seats anyway. The Greens are doing okay. I think them getting 2 seats makes sense. The Coalition getting 6 seats, I think would be quite tricky, but I think it is doable, but I'm going to say they'll get 5 seats. The One Nation Party would get 1 seat. They're not polling incredibly well. I believe in 2016 they only got about 89% of the primary vote and they still won 2 seats. But for now I'm just going to give them 1 because I believe that the last seat will possibly go to Gerard Rennick. If you don't know who Gerard Rennick is, he is a former member of the LNP in Queensland who quit because he lost pre-selection, and he is quite popular. So he's actually starting his own party, which is basically it's just an independent party, because in order for him to run above the line he needs to make a party, but I don't think he's going to be like seriously running any more candidates anywhere else. So yeah, I think Gerard Rennick would win that last Senate seat. In Western Australia, Labor is actually still not polling too badly, and the Greens are struggling to get above 11%. So this makes me think that maybe the Labor Party would get 5 seats here, the Coalition would get 5 seats, the Greens would get 1, One Nation Party would get 1, and that would be the result. In South Australia, again, the Greens are getting sort of overshadowed by the Labor Party, who are not doing too badly here. Even on the two-party prefer, the Labor Party are not too bad in South Australia. So I think in this case it would be the same as WA, where the Coalition would get 5 seats, the LP will get 5 seats, the Greens will get 1, and One Nation will get 1. And then finally in Tasmania, it's always a bit of a mystery. Based on the state election, we would assume 5 for the Coalition, 4 for Labor, 2 for the Greens, and 1 for Jackie Lambie. Now there's a few mysteries here. The Jackie Lambie network has sort of collapsed a little bit. There's sort of questions about if she will maintain polling. Of course, if she herself runs for election, I think that she would do better than any of her proxies would from here on out. I don't know exactly what she's going to do in the future to maintain party loyalty, but yeah, there's a question of whether or not people still have faith in her as a candidate, but I'm going to assume that she's going to win a seat. Maybe she'll get only like 4 or 5%, but she'll still win a seat. And I'm also going to assume that even though the One Nation Party did not run in the state election, I think that they would do well enough to take that final seat off the Coalition. If we look at the 2022 federal election, the One Nation Party got about 4%, the Liberal Democrats about 2, Shooters for Sharmas 2, and United Australia about 1.6. And so that sort of like right-wing minor party vote, I feel like is strong enough to beat out the Liberal Party from getting a 5th seat. But the Liberal Party, they were, a couple points off getting a 5th seat last time, so maybe with a little bit of a swing to their name, they wouldn't do too badly. So it's either basically down to a right-wing minor party or the Coalition getting that last seat. And then, of course, we've got the territories, which I am just predicting is going to be a status quo result. Now, there is an elephant in the room that I have not discussed, and that is Clive Palmer, the UAP. Now, Ralph Babbitt is still in the Senate. He's still in the UAP. The question is Clive Palmer going to be putting forward a whole lot of money next time to run again? Would he do that in a double dissolution? I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows the answer to that question. In this kind of scenario, you could imagine Ralph Babbitt perhaps joining the One Nation Party if they'll have him. I know he's a bit sort of radical. I don't know if he's too radical for the One Nation Party, but I'm just going to assume that that right-wing minor party seat, that seat that I'm basically giving to the One Nation Party, that could be possibly a UAP seat if UAP do really well. But at the moment, they're only really polling One Nation. And in every state, except for Tasmania, which we don't really have data for, One Nation are doing well enough to win one seat in every state. If we look at the poll bludger, the One Nation Party have gained 2% since the last election in the primary vote. So I don't think it's too much of a surprise the One Nation Party will do well enough to win a seat in every state, except for possibly not Tasmania, I don't know. And that's considering the fact that I gave right-wing minor parties a seat in every state last election. And in fact, in Queensland, I actually gave 2 right-wing minor parties seats, which is both the UAP and One Nation. So here's the results if there was a double dissolution held today, in my opinion. Now, legalized cannabis, big mystery. I don't know how it would change things. Maybe they would take a seat off of like the Labour Party some places, or the Greens some places, or maybe even the Coalition some places. I'm not too sure, but I think it would look something like this. This is not particularly that helpful for the Labour Party as compared to now. They would still need the Greens to pass legislation. As you see here, the crossbench, which is made up of 6 One Nation, adds up to 33, 34, 36. They can't pass legislation without the Coalition or the Greens. And with the Greens, they would need both them and 2 crossbenchers, assuming that the One Nation Party is unconstructed, which they often are, and assuming that Gerard Rennick, who is quite right-wing, is unconstructed, they would need both the independent David Pocock and Jackie Lambie to pass legislation. They would need both of them. So in my opinion, a double dissolution would not be something that the Labour Party would be looking at now, and I do think, as most people suspect, that it is a massive bluff, and it's just Albo trying to look kind of strong because he has the perception of being weak. Spoiler, he is. So he's trying to make himself look tough by saying, like, if you don't do this, I'll go to a double dissolution. It's not going to happen because he knows it's not going to end well. The only reason you would go to a double dissolution is because you currently are polling quite well and you want to get rid of the current Senate and replace it with one which is going to be more constructive for you. And I don't think that would be a good idea for Labour. I think it's a much better idea to do what they're probably going to do, which is wait until around April next year to have a half Senate election. And in a second, I'll show you how they would probably fare better in a half Senate election. So here's the result that I'm predicting if the Labour Party goes to a half Senate election next year. There are a couple of sort of questions, like if the Labour Party will actually win 2 seats in Queensland, or if this other seat might go to Gerard Rennick, who I mentioned earlier, or if the Coalition might fail again to win 3 seats in Victoria and this last seat might go to someone like One Nation. But I think a result like this is probably likely. And as you can see here, the Labour Party has a few more options to work. I mean, they still have to work with the Greens, of course, because 26 plus 3 is 29, 30, 34. So yeah, they're way off working without the Greens or the Coalition. But it does mean that with the Greens, they have 37 seats, and then they've got 5, I believe, left of centre people to work with, and they need 2 of them. I mean, I'm not too sure about Tammy Tyrrell, what her deal is, but I know that Jackie Lambie is definitely more left of centre. The other people are David Pocock, Lydia Thorpe, Fatima Payman, who's just released the name of her new party. I actually haven't mentioned Fatima Payman's new party, Australia's Voice. We have no polling on this party and no indication that this party is going to be successful at the upcoming federal election. I know that it is trying to be a sort of catch-all party, trying to take votes from the left and the right, but I assume that if it's going to take votes from anyone, it's probably going to be people on the left. Maybe, you know, it could nab a seat if there was a double dissolution in Western Australia from the Labour Party. Instead of Labour Party getting a 5th seat, Fatima Payman could win her seat back. Or in South Australia, they could win a seat instead of the 5th Labour Party. I don't really know. The point is, it's not going to make things easier for the Labour Party. So Mr. Albanese, should he go to a double dissolution? No, he shouldn't. He should just wait until next year, wait until April, wait until there's interest rate cuts, wait until hopefully the economy gets a little bit better, people are feeling the cost of living struggles a little bit less. I don't know if it will actually be better or worse in terms of polling. There's obviously issues that Albo really needs to tackle, like the housing crisis, which I think is actually the biggest problem at the moment, but also the most damaging problem if he actually tries to address it. And I'll be making a video about this real soon. But yeah, even if Labour Party fails to get a second seat in Queensland, this Senate here is still doable for the Labour Party next election. So I think sticking it out and going for a half Senate election is the best idea here. The Labour Party did pretty well in the 2022 election. They managed to get 3 seats in Western Australia, and I know that Fatima Payman has taken that seat and ran, but it's still an ally for the Labour Party, and they managed to get 2 seats in Queensland, and also the Greens got a seat. And of course, Jackie Lambie's running mate also got a seat, and she is to the left. While we're on the topic, I might as well look it up and look what kind of ways Tammy Tyrell votes. And it looks like she sort of votes in a bit of a mixed bag. Like, she votes similarly to, like, Jim Molan, Jackie Lambie, David Pocock, Penny Wong, Maurice Payne, Simon Birmingham, Malcolm Roberts. It's all kind of sort of a mixed bag. But I will reiterate that I think it's better for the Labour Party to have her as a senator than a coalition member or a One Nation member, which is what they probably would have otherwise. And so if you believe that you had a pretty good election last time, but the election coming up is not going to be so good for you, the strategy there is go for the half Senate election. Keep what you maintained last election. If you fail, the failure won't be as big, especially when there's only 6 seats per state. It makes it very difficult for either the right or the left to win more than 3 seats each. In Tasmania, it's a little different because that state is just a bit more progressive. I suspect a half Senate election next April. I'm expecting a double dissolution is not going to happen, and it is all talk from Albanese. Thank you for watching.